spontaneous human combustion. That shit is weird, bro.
Oh yeah.
That shit is. Have you looked into that?
What up, buttons? It's your boys, Adam Stark
And Alan Roper, and we ask you again, what in the transitions do those buttons do?
Oh, going from here to here to here to there.
To there to here to here to there.
Today we're going to be talking about transitions in music, how they're used, where they show up in music, and different types of cases where you might want to add them in or do certain things to make those transitions a bit seamless.
Yes, the idea of making the textural contrast of section A or section B or whatever part of the song seem like it was already meant to be that way. That bridging of two completely different sections, like Adam said, the seamlessness. The better them transitions, the better them sounds.
Yes,
in my opinion.
Absolutely. But first, hey buttons, what's up? This is kind of a surprise news jump in for this episode. We weren't planning on one, but this last Friday, April 9th, 2021, it came out in the news that DMX died of a drug-related induced heart attack. And since he was such a big influence in the hip-hop community and the music communities, we just wanted to kind of bring that to highlight in our little news section. He was a really inspiring artist, even with his problems and issues with his fight against drugs and his own addictions. He still was a very kind and open, spiritual type of guy who really just tried to do a lot of good in his family and his career to try and better himself. And even though obviously his addiction kind of got the better of him, we still wanted to kind of like pay homage to his talent and his skills. He was a very well known rapper. And I think the first time that I heard him was X Gonna Give It To You and Rough Riders, and those were kind of like how I knew him. Or I was just getting into the hip hop kind of music and kind of understanding that at that time. And it was, I don't know, it was just interesting. It was new stuff when I heard it. I thought it was really inspiring. It was bump and like, get down to. He was a very interesting artist and character type that nobody had really ever done. I mean, his whole barking thing and everything I thought was always really interesting and stylistic. It was really cool. But yeah, I wanted to pass it off to Alan, who is traveling at the moment, but he's going to talk about it a little bit as well. So I'm going to pass it off to him, and we'll come back and we'll get back to the show.
What's up, buttons? It's your boy Alan tapping in from the road, out here and doing some work. I just want to briefly cover the late DMX and his effect on my life. So as a hip-hop artist growing up in the South, I wasn't privy to a lot of independent or underground artists like what I listen to now. However, I was privy to DMX and, Tupac and Biggie and Mos Def and things like that. So I think what Adam said about X Gonna Give It To You, that was probably the first one I heard too. And then from there was just albums of good material. And, yeah, Adam said as well, like he did a little different. He stood out. He had his time that was really, awesome. Everyone was on DMX for a long time. And it made me like enjoy hip hop a lot more. Cause like I said, I wasn't privy to all the stuff, that I know now, and that was one of the few that I knew. He was so big. Also, like he did some movies. He did quite a few movies. I remember like Exit Wounds with Steven Seagal and a few others. And like he was always so intense in movies. So once you connected the artist with the acting, like a lot of hip hop heads are or hip hop artists are, I feel like I got to know him a little more. I don't know a whole lot about his private life. I mean, I've heard stories or whatever, but we all have demons, And I think Adam touched on like the things he did in his life that were good, and I just don't know those things. I'm sure that's what it is. And I just feel like after hearing, growing up with like DMX, it gave me kind of a feeling or a flavor to move towards hip hop. So I got to give him love for that. I definitely think that he was very original. And that being said, we lost another good one. So rest in peace, DMX. You'll be missed. You were missed, already in music. Thanks for everything you did, man. Appreciate you.
We have our pick of the week for you guys. Alan, what's this week's pick?
Oh, well, there's this cat named Mark. I want to say Rebele. Probably said it wrong. Butchered it. Sorry, Mark. Seems French, so it might be right. But this guy likes a live loop, and he streams all the time from his, I guess, house. And he's done tons of 2-hour streams or whatever. But this is just like a 2-minute video of how to funk. So let's bring that clip up.
Nice.
This dude's hilarious. Goofy.
I love his stuff. It's so weird. More shakers. More shakers. Isn't he like almost always in a bathrobe too?
Always. So he's just live looping.
Get down.
Here comes a bass. Yep.
So seamless.
Oh, it's impossible for me not to fall in love with you, baby. Yeah. But it's got to be tonight, baby. Be tonight. It's got to be tonight. Yo, let's do it, baby girl. Gotta do it like that, yo. Tell me that you want me. Tell me that you need me. Tell me that you love me tonight. Tell me that you want me. Tell me that you need me. Tell me that you love me tonight. Tell me that you want me. Tell me that you need me. Tell me that you love me tonight. No. Tell me that you want me. Tell me that you need me. Tell me that you love me tonight. Tell me that you want me. Tell me that you need me. Go ahead, baby. Tell me that you love me
So good.
Man,
Oh man, that's so good.
that a couple things. That live looping ability, his voice is good too. It's perfect. And then, dude, that mustache though,
No, right?
I
Love
don't know,
it.
Seems French. Can't say for sure.
Oh, man, that
Monterey.
I love how seamless he made that like sounds, and just how quick he goes into it. It's I think my favorite parts about that, and I think with especially like funk, because that's been something that I've been looking into recently, is like adding a little bit of funk to some stuff, and just the way that it felt like the when he added the organ in, because you have that, it's that call and response type thing where it's just like you have the first part that dun 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 dun, and it's so good. I love it. I love that.
Yeah, he's
style
got,
of
and
stuff.
he does like, he's got a bunch of streams that are multiple hours, bunch of stuff on his channel. So check him out because he has like multiple streams that are long, and he has like different styles that he does or different genres that he mixes in, and it's really interesting. And he's super like offbeat and weird. It makes it fun. Like you get kind of stuck watching it. You're like, this is a real performance, and he's just seamless at what he does. I haven't seen him really make any mistakes that stand out. So check this guy out. He's legit. They'll be in the show notes.
Definitely. All right. So today we are gonna talk about transitions, and we have a whole list of transitions.
Music transitions.
Just
to be clear.
And what we kind of did is we kind of we're kind of giving our own interpretation of this, of what kind of transitions there are, because there's different types of transitions throughout all different types of music. In even in a single song, you can use multiple different types of transitions depending on what type of feeling or emotions you're trying to portray in your piece of art that you're creating. What do you want your listeners to feel? And a lot of that has to do with how you can build them up or lead them from section to section, from part to part of your song. Transitions are a very important part about that.
Absolutely. I mean, this is just a few things we're going to cover, but yeah, whatever you're trying to convey in a track, a mood, or whatever the vibe is, transitions help you go from one thing to the next, a bridge, like we said, and the more seamless, and it doesn't always have to be. There's ways of doing bad transitions that could be good, and vice versa. But whatever you're trying to convey comes through in your music. So this is one step or one part of making a song that could like help you
absolutely
that mood. Yeah.
So these terms are not technically scientific or anything like that. We kind of made some of these terms up, but
we're making a dictionary of terms. Though,
we're making a dictionary of terms because in some of our research, there really isn't specific terms for all of these. These are just things that we have heard, and we kind of wanted to put our own, in our own frame of reference for what we're talking about. But first, I just wanted to take and kind of break down the different sections of a song that you would normally hear the transitions at. And each one of these is kind of the parts right before you go from one to the other. So it would be at the end of each of these, and leading in obviously to the next section of it. I think the only one that wouldn't really have a transition except from silence would be the intro, or you can also have a pre-intro. Pre-intros will be anything from people talking before a track, or people getting a hype up. Hyping up the crowd or something like that could technically be a pre-intro before you go into the intro of the song. Electronic music, so you'll have a lot of people where you'll have a release version, and then you'll have a mixing version, which will have a pre-intro that allows you to more easily mix from one song to another. So a little bit of drums before the actual intro. Then you have your straight intro. Your intro is usually going to be your starting out of the song, the initial feel, drawing people into it. You've got your build, where this is where you're really getting into the hype section of your song, where you're really going to, and again, this is with electronic music, it's going to be like usually a big drop. This is in other stuff, it's going to be kind of like the pre-chorus for pop songs, anything like that, like right before the chorus. So your next section would be the drop. Drop is also the chorus. So your drop, your chorus, your repeatable ones, the ones that you kind of come back to, the meat of your song, as it were. So intros can as it were. So verses can be in verses will be in part of there too, as that's part of the build or kind of lower sections of it. And it just really depends on how you kind of like chop your song up and style it out. Breakdowns will come after that, or what would you call breakdowns, or in a lot of electronic musics, especially like trance and songs to where you kind of just take a break from the chorus, depending on how it's like not quite another verse. It's the little part before either another verse or another just straight drop into your chorus.
So not the
repeating
bridge.
stuff. Yeah, no, not the bridge. I mean, technically it could be considered a bridge. I know there's a little bit of looseness around how bridges are either used and or talked about.
I ain't driving across no loose bridges.
Yeah, no, you don't want to drive across a
Kidding
loose
me?
bridge. But yes, then interludes and bridges, which could technically be kind of mashed into there. And then you have your outros, which is going to be the one to where the outro is the kind of final transition, and it's a transition either to the end of the song back to silence or the end of the song into another song if you're DJing. So those are kind of places that you would see those transitions. So we wanted to talk about the types of transitions that you might hear, and any of these can be used pretty much in all of those sections that we just kind of like walked through. I don't think there's a written rule on what fits better well. It must be here because
Artistic approach.
yeah, it's the artistic approach to where a lot of these can be used pretty much anywhere. So our first transition that we'll try and talk about and explain is space and silence. Alan, tell us about space and silence.
Space and silence. Okay, well, and there you go. So basically, we're gonna pull up a track that I've made a while back, and it has your typical kind of drum lead in, but before it goes straight into the next section, everything kind of drops off, and the vocal kind of lingers, and that silence happens in the instrumentation, not in everything. So this isn't exactly silence. There's tracks like that, of course, and we both have them, but in this example, it's just like the vocal's still kind of lingering, and then it hits when all the bass and everything hits, and it gives you that little break and unexpected drop off in sound and brings it back to you
Right.
full sound. So go ahead and pop that up. Don't look at the video though, anybody. That's definitely not me. That's mine.
Ready or not.
So that's a pretty good example there of just of it's
A vocal sample,
of
yeah.
just that quick just silence that just makes you listen closer about what's about to happen to it.
If I would have pulled the sample out, the Here I Come, which everyone knows what that is, if I wouldn't have had that in there, it still, you expect it on the next measure or whatever, but that tied it together to make it smoother. Like I tried it without the samples. I had the other vocal sample in, but that one particular one, I threw it in, or did it without it, and it was cool, but it had left something to be desired. So I threw the vocal sample in, and it kind of made it glued together. It seemed like it was more appropriate, and it felt like it was what was always supposed to be happening. You know what I mean?
With kind of like space and silence in and of itself, playing with the absence of sound, really.
Yes.
Which I think a lot of people sometimes miss. I know that when I was first starting with music, I felt like I needed to fill every space with it, especially with using DAW, like certain DAWs. When you go into MIDI mode, like filling all the drum gaps or filling every little, I could throw a sound in there or this gap here, or all these different types of things where, you know, either you need to just let something ring out a little bit or adding a little bit of reverb, or literally just doing kind of what we were talking about with sidechain compression. It kind of gives you that little bit of just like, it sucks in a little bit, it drops the sounds of just something of everything else and then brings it back in. So you're playing with silence, you're playing with the space between the notes and the sounds. So the silence drop gets used in a lot of places. So in a lot of these examples, we're going to hear the silence get used as part of that section, especially when you're going into those types of drops. Any type of builds and drops are going to have that in, usually have that in there or some form of it. Another one that we're calling the offset or fake out is an example that you might have heard actually last week with a song aptly named right now, Frankie Bean. Is it's kind of like you think it's about to drop, but then it kind of does a secondary. It makes you wait a little bit before it actually drops again. So let's go ahead and bring that example up. And again, you'll probably remember this from last week. So that is kind of the precursor to just like you think it's about to drop, but then it goes a little bit more than you were expecting it to go.
Right.
Or it has a little bit of difference on how that drop actually was pulled in on it.
It threw me off.
It throws you off. It keeps you guessing. So after that, we have formally fit into that one as well is the double drop, to where instead of just having like a small section transition from that to where it's a little bit of a fake out, it's kind of a longer fake out, and also known as the double drop. So it drops and then it goes down, and so it doesn't actually go into a full like chorus section, it goes into another build up section. So you actually kind of have double builds. It's a double drop, double build on it.
It's like a pre-chorus or pre-verse, like a real small segment of that.
Yes, exactly. So our example for that
is that the Major Lazer Believer.
Yeah.
It's Major Lazer and Showtek.
All right. So yes, this is our double drop selection or example. That's that first one. And there's that, finally jumps into that second one there. So that's a fair example.
Dude,
of
I was vibing out.
A double drop. Sorry to kill the buzz there, guys.
I'm pissed.
So another one that kind of it kind of fits in. Double drop can sometimes fit into that one. Is surprise without warning. I call these two surprise without warning and surprise with a warning. So a surprise without warning. The one thing that you can do about this, not what maybe some of you are thinking.
Wait.
Surprise.
A surprise without warning is just that, a surprise. A surprise with warning is anticipated and therefore not a surprise. But we're going to call it that anyway because it's our show, and that's it.
Yeah.
And you guys are on board. You're our buttons. Let's go.
Yes. So a surprise without warning is basically, or surprise in general, is taking two sections of your songs that don't actually quite mash together. You're going to have something completely different than what you would normally have. So say your builds or your intros and stuff like that, when you finally get to your chorus, it sounds completely different or sometimes unwarranted. So it can, and it's just surprising and or jarring. This can be good sometimes depending on what you're going for. It can also easily be bad depending on what you've done. There's a ton of songs that I either have already fixed or don't have anymore, specifically because they ended up being bad. I'm sure everybody has that problem with that. Is you'd be like, all right, this will fit. These two will go together. Or you make one section, you come back and do another one, and then when you finally put them together, you're like, oh no.
Or you
But-
lose those tracks because you didn't know that you needed to back them up on something like this.
Oh.
And I've lost so many
Rip.
tracks that were not good anyway. You know?
Yeah. So our example for that would be this: a Flux Pavilion, Pull the Trigger.
It's a good song.
This is a good example.
These days, better just not to talk.
So that goes with that pre-intro.
And
it takes you- So it has that pre-intro for it, and then it just, drops off into a completely new section with almost no warning there. We can go back to that for just a second.
It comes back in later too.
These days, better
it's
just
just
not
different.
to talk.
So that's the example of the surprise kind of without warning, or the change of tone all of a sudden without warning.
I keep wanting to hear these songs, and this is what I mean about transitions. You hear that transition, you're just sucked into it, like sidechain compression. You're drawn in, and as soon as it stops, I'm immediately mad.
Yep.
I see red, and it's not because of the red light filter behind the TV. So I'm pissed.
Yeah.
And what do we have next?
All right, so
this.
the next would be the surprise with a warning, and surprising with a warning is kind of something.
Not surprising.
It's not well. It's surprising in the sense of like the example I'm going to use is a song that I created.
It's one of your okay.
It's one of my tracks, and the kind of surprise of it is like it does the same thing to where one section of the song sounds a certain way and then the other section of the song doesn't, and the pre-warning of saying I'm about to change it up different than what you're normally expecting, and this happens a lot too. It's a very common thing to do is you use some sort of either vocal cue or kind of some sort of cue that lets the person know that you don't know what's coming still, but it's going to change different. And for in this instance, in this one, we are using the example of somebody saying switch or switch up.
Perfect.
And
Yeah.
it does
It's a
that.
cue.
So here, this is the example of that.
Tell him, Todd, tell him.
So it sounds a little bit different, and then it ends up changing what it was actually going to. And Alan is getting frustrated because he wants to hear the song all the way through.
You know, I love this shit. I love this music stuff, man. I like talking too, but man, I got headphones on. That's my own little world. You
Right.
keep ruining my life.
All right, so other examples, and a lot of these, especially nowadays, transitions for certain parts of songs use good ones that end up using silence as part of it, or drops. They end up using vocal samples, and we've heard that in a couple already. Alan, your silence one, it adds a little bit of vocals there because hearing something relatable that you can understand or connect to, like
Right.
somebody saying words, it's like being when you get thrown off a ledge, but someone kind of throws you a line and going or you have a parachute or someone's letting you down slowly
Right,
before you
slowly.
get picked back up.
And the secret to this too is also, and I'm not saying everyone should go and jump on the most famous vocal samples of all time, like in mine with the Lauryn Hill. Clear your samples, obviously, but if it's something we've all heard before, something that you immediately register as something maybe from your childhood, or like, it could be like if you watched Alf as a kid and you hear his voice and it triggers that, and like, this is why, it was big in hip hop. It like these samples, whether they're instrumental or vocal, but in this conversation, vocal samples, like the Lauryn Hill sample, ready or not, immediately most people are gonna be like, oh shit, and that just immediately puts your head in a place, and then the beat drops and you're feeling it. So using like commonly spoken things or something that you've heard before, or like what Adam did with the switch, it gives you a cue, an indication of what they're going to do or what you should feel. Those are that's like a low-key secret there. That's why sampling, in my opinion, is so dope and so used with vocals, because if it's popular, whether you clear the sample or not, like when someone hears it and they know what it is, it immediately makes them feel some type of like home or some type of like connection, like Adam was saying,
Yep.
So
So yes, for a vocal sample, this is probably one of the most well-known vocal sample ones where everybody knows what's coming after this one. But since it's kind of iconic, I thought this was a good example for this one. I'm not going to even jump into the video one. I'm just going to play the sound clip for it. You guys should probably already know what's coming. Yeah, everyone, if you're not an electronic fan, I'm sure you know that one. That one was probably so big back in 2011.
Transformers having sex, clearly.
Yep. Robots and robot dinosaurs. So yeah, vocal samples are used everywhere for that kind of catch and everything like that. So for
there's one more, right? There's the one of the tone deaf sample where like the ethereal drop off, the fall off.
That's right.
So we have the fall off. We call it the fall off. There's probably a technical term for it, and I'm in school for technical terms, but don't care. Gonna say what I want to say.
Yeah. So
it's our show.
The fall off is the fall off transition is kind of like it can be done in a couple different ways.
Right.
And again, some of these lines are blurred on how you would actually kind of use them or talk about them. But because it's not always about, builds and drops. You can use these in any different part of your, any type of music. And a good example, like you said, is the tone deafs use this whole thing where they take they take 3 minutes of a song almost to just build it up and build it up and build it up and build it up.
Yeah, that's what he did. Yeah.
And then they just drop you, and it's just, it brings everything back down. So we won't play the whole clip there. We're going to play right before it.
Yeah,
the
this
full
is the middle
build
of the song.
And it's in the middle of the song, and then the rest of the song is like this low part of it. So we call this the fall off or the fall, just because you're kind of just dropped and just like let go.
This is like the cliff idea he had, but without the parachute. You just kind of fall.
Yeah.
And then you're just like, oh, okay. You don't expect it. Very, very much of a surprise. When I heard this, I listened a bunch of times. I was like, okay. And now I'm like, it's gorgeous. It's beautiful how he does this. Tone Deaf's amazing. My favorite MC of all time. He sings in this track, but just saying.
Here we go.
These are the things you don't see coming.
And so that is
perfect. How perfect of a vocal is that?
Yeah.
These are the things you don't see coming. That's exactly what happened.
Yes, exactly. And that's the rest of the song is like that kind of like softer section all of a sudden. So he spent almost 3.5 minutes building this thing up and building it up from like going quiet and going build. And again, very artistic choice on how he does that. It almost,
and that's
I can't,
an intro.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of what I call the fall off with like no build back. So you're just kind of like left there to float in the abyss of your feelings, your thoughts, your whatever the music does to you. And a good example for a fall off that are used in it is bridges. Bridges tend to use this quite a lot. Bridges in songs, or the kind of like the part of the song that sounds a little bit different than the rest of it. I won't say, again, it's not used all the time for bridges or these types of sections, but a fall off or a change of tone comparatively to something different, it kind of like indicates a type of change or anything like that.
Right.
And a good example of that would be Happier by Marshmello does a really good bridge part to where the song section is kind of it's more upbeat through the whole thing, and then it kind of like it's the Bastille and what is it? It's Bastille and Marshmello on there. So this is that.
I want you to be happier. I want you to be happier. So I'll go. I will go. So I'll go. I will go. Lately, I've been thinking. I want you to be happier. I want you to be happier.
So that's that same thing there. But then they build it. The difference there is they end up building that back up and kind of bringing you back into that more upbeat, lifted part of it. So we kind of call that the fall off with a build back. Kind of brings you back into the section, but there's that kind of bottom pit there. So yeah, those are kind of the transition sections that we've talked about. There's other types of transitions, smaller ones, and in different types of places. Like we use a lot of fills or risers, like we talked about last week, for the different types of sections that you can do stuff, because you can do smaller transitions. Just even like in your verses or choruses, you may do like double longs or ones that are like twice as long as normal, that you don't want to sound too repetitive, or you're changing up a little bit of stuff, so you want that little bit of thing in there that like lets you know. And that's where a lot of fills, like drum fills and instrumental nuances, come in.
So yeah, all this stuff that we played, the videos and some of the songs during this explanation about transitions, they'll be in the show notes. Whatever platform you're on, you'll see them below in the show notes, and they'll give you links to, whether it's a YouTube video or a song or whatever. You'll at least get the information, so you can check it out if you want. Some of that's mine and Adam's music, so go check that out first before any of the other ones.
And yeah, and you have to screw everybody else.
Because it's our show, and if you're watching this, you got to listen to it.
Yeah,
also,
exactly.
Separately.
Get to know our stuff, then go listen to everybody else that you want to listen to.
They're famous. They got money. We don't have any money.
They got the time. Well, thank you again for joining us. We will be back next week again, every Wednesday. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And again, check out our Patreon in the description down below in the show notes. And as always, we'll keep asking those questions. What those
buttons do.
Drop the bass.